Do you believe in time travel? What if we told you right now that there are real, documented cases that actually prove it? If you're thinking that time travel only exists in movies and that everything must have a logical explanation, then we're really curious to hear how you'll explain these 15 mysterious cases. So let's jump straight into the first one, and this one is on a whole different level. Number 15. The mysterious disappearance of the Zanetti train in 1911. The incident you're about to hear is said to have truly happened, and it's considered one of the most baffling events ever linked to the concept of time travel. On July 14, 1911, the luxurious Zanetti train departed from Rome. On board were 106 wealthy passengers looking forward to a relaxing journey through Italy. The first hours went by without a single problem. The sun was shining, everyone was in a great mood. No one had the slightest idea that this trip would become one of the greatest mysteries in railway history. But when the train reached the Lombardy Tunnel, something happened that no one has been able to explain to this day. Absolutely no one. The 500-meter tunnel was normally routine for every trip along this route. But this time, the train entered and never came out the other side. Neither passengers nor locomotive nor carriages were ever seen again. Pretty insane. Just imagine the whole situation for a moment. A train full of people vanishes right before the eyes of the world, leaving nothing but silence and countless questions that remain unanswered to this very day. Rescue teams searched the entire area for days. Every inch of the tunnel was examined, but there were no signs of an accident. No rubble, no damaged tracks, no debris. Only one single person was able to report what happened. A passenger who, in a sudden panic, had jumped off the train. His account is as eerie as it is mysterious. Shortly before the tunnel entrance, he claimed, the train suddenly filled with a dense, white fog. This fog was so impenetrable that he could barely see anything. In a panic, he jumped off, hit the ground hard, and lost consciousness. When he woke up, the train was gone, and it had never reached the other end of the tunnel. Was the fog this survivor saw maybe more than just a weather phenomenon? Could it have been the visible veil of an invisible boundary between two different points in time? A fascinating thought. Even years later, there was still no trace. The tunnel itself was destroyed during World War II, leaving behind nothing but the memory of an event that even seasoned investigators couldn't understand. Some speculated that the train might have slipped into some kind of time portal, an invisible gateway to another era or even another dimension. This theory unexpectedly gained support when Italian authorities discovered something astonishing in old Mexican archives years later. In records from 1845, there was mention of a group of around 100 confused Italians who had suddenly appeared in the middle of Mexico City without any explanation. They seemed disoriented and claimed they had arrived by train from Rome, having departed on July 14, 1911. If this statement is true, the passengers would have traveled 66 years into the past. Eyewitnesses thought they were crazy, and many of them were placed in psychiatric institutions. But the files contained detailed reports in which they consistently insisted they were from the year 1911. And then there was one last detail, almost unbelievable. One of the men who appeared in Mexico City in 1845 carried a snuff box with the clearly engraved manufacturing year 1907, dated decades after their appearance in Mexico. This artifact is still kept there today. For some, it's nothing more than a curiosity. For others, it's the ultimate proof that the Zanetti train and its passengers were actually pulled through a strange time anomaly inside the Lombardy Tunnel and flung into the past. So did the Zanetti train truly slip into a hidden time window, beginning a journey from which there was no return? Absolutely insane. And this is nothing compared to what you're about to see. Before we continue, here's a quick question for you. If you could travel to any point in time for one full day, which year would you choose? Just write the year down in the comments below. We're really excited to see your answers. If you're enjoying this video, we'd really appreciate a like and a subscription. Thank you so much. Number 14. The Unbelievable Time Journey of Paul Amadeus Dienach. Paul Amadeus Dienach was a Swiss teacher whose life took a dramatic turn in 1921. Due to a rare illness, encephalitis lethargica, he fell into a deep coma and didn't wake up until almost a year later. But while his body lay motionless in a hospital bed, something extraordinary is said to have happened. His consciousness supposedly traveled far into the future, specifically to the year 3906. The story is especially fascinating because it isn't about a classic time machine, but about a shift of consciousness. Dienach later claimed that his mind had taken over the body of a man living in that distant future. This detail sets his experience apart from many other known time travel accounts. His writings, later published under the title Chronicles from the Future, describe this journey as a purely mental experience. Not a physical movement through time, but a complete shift of awareness. Absolutely insane. In this distant era, Dienach experienced a world fundamentally different from our present. He described highly advanced social structures, technological achievements, and a way of life deeply centered on the well-being of everyone. The society he saw was advanced both technologically and morally. He spoke of cities perfectly harmonizing with their environment, and of a humanity that had left conflict and war behind. The idea of slipping into a completely foreign body with a single thought and seeing a distant future through its eyes is both fascinating and terrifying. His descriptions of medical progress were particularly impressive. In this future, diseases considered incurable in our time had already been healed. There were procedures that slowed the aging process dramatically and extended human lifespans to 200 years or more. The goal wasn't just a long life, but a healthy and fulfilling one. But Dienach didn't only speak of material achievements. A central theme of his account was the rise of human consciousness. The people of that time had undergone a spiritual awakening and found a deeper connection with one another and with the universe. They understood how the cosmos worked in ways that remain close to us today. This heightened awareness shaped their entire existence and created a culture in which the collective good stood above everything. Eventually, the moment of his return came. Dienach described how his consciousness slowly faded from that distant future and how he regained awareness with a deeper understanding of human existence. When he opened his eyes, he found himself back in the year 1922, in his own body, in his own time. So is it truly possible that the mind of this man traveled across millennia during nearly a year of coma? Is our consciousness capable of leaving the body and undertaking journeys through time? An absolutely fascinating thought. And it's very interesting to realize that the world in the year 3906 still exists and hasn't come to an end. If you thought that was already insane, just wait for what comes next. Number 13. The Mysterious Disappearance of David Lang. The story of David Lang, a farmer from the state of Tennessee, is one of the strangest and creepiest accounts in American history. On September 23, 1880, he is said to have literally vanished into thin air right in front of his family and 2 additional witnesses. He was walking across his field, and in the very next moment, he was simply gone. No sound, no scream, no sign of where he could have disappeared. His wife, his children, and neighbors immediately searched the exact spot where he had last been seen. There they found something unusual. A perfectly circular patch of ground where no grass grew anymore. No matter how often they tried to replant it, it stayed barren for years. This detail added an even eerier layer to the case, but what happened after his disappearance made the story even more mysterious. Months later, his wife and children reported that they sometimes heard his voice at that exact spot. It sounded distant, desperate, almost as if he were calling for help. The words seemed to come out of nowhere, from the air itself, suggesting that something truly supernatural had taken place. Over the years, countless theories emerged. Some mentioned a natural cause, like a sudden sinkhole. Others suspected an abduction by extraterrestrials. But one hypothesis stands out the most. At the place where David Lang vanished, a portal may have opened for a brief moment, a gateway to another location, another dimension, or perhaps even another time. The barren circle in the grass was interpreted by some as the imprint of this portal. Reports of such phenomena often describe transitions that connect two completely different worlds. If such a gateway really opened on David Lang's field, it could explain why he disappeared without leaving a trace. What remains especially unsettling is that for months, his voice continued to be heard, desperate and pleading. According to his family, it sounded exactly like him, yet it felt as if it came from far away, from a place no one could pinpoint. Again and again, he supposedly shouted the same sentence. "Help me. I don't know where I am. Please, help me." Extremely creepy. So do portals really exist? Openings that appear out of nowhere and pull people into some kind of in-between world? And could David Lang have slipped into a dimension from which there was no return? A thought that is as fascinating as it is terrifying. If such portals truly exist, how many times have they opened right near us, just for a brief moment, while we walked by without noticing? A deeply disturbing idea. Are you ready for an escalation? Then pay close attention now. Number 12. The vanished village of Hoer Verde. The following incident is said to have truly happened, and it's considered one of the most mysterious and unsettling events, ever linked to time travel and parallel worlds. In 1923, something occurred in Brazil that remains unsolved to this day. The entire population of the small village of Hoer Verde, around 600 people, disappeared without a trace. All that remained were empty streets, abandoned houses, and one deeply disturbing message. One morning that year, a traveler arrived at the village and found it completely deserted. The doors were left open, as if the residents had suddenly dropped everything in the middle of their daily routines. Half-full cups of coffee still sat on tables, and unfinished food lay in the kitchens. There was no sign of struggle, no evidence of a violent escape. Everything looked as if life in the village had been frozen in a single moment. The only clue pointing toward a possible motive was a board in the village square. Written on it in large, ominous-looking letters was, "There is no salvation." A message that raised far more questions than it answered. Who left it? And what exactly was there no escape from? A deeply unsettling question. Speculation spread quickly. Some suspected a supernatural cause, from a collective alien abduction to demonic activity. Others believed the villagers may have been part of a secret cult, anticipating the imminent end of the world. In that case, the message might have been their final warning, a declaration that there was no way to escape the unavoidable end, the apocalypse. But there is one theory many find the most fascinating. The residents of Hoer Verde may have found a way to travel into another dimension. According to reports, Brazilian investigators found strange objects and books after the disappearance, items pointing toward ancient esoteric knowledge. These writings described detailed rituals designed to overcome space and time and to open gateways into parallel worlds. It's believed the villagers performed these ceremonies deep in the nearby forest. They used complex patterns of mystical symbols, specific mantras, and rare herbs to break through the boundaries of our reality. Some believe they actually managed to create a portal. Perhaps they had spent years preparing for that one moment. The moment a gateway to another world would open, without anyone knowing what truly lay on the other side. A portal, as it is often described, is a passage between different places, times, or dimensions, allowing someone to move from one point to another without any loss of time. If the people of Hoer Verde really opened such a gateway, it could explain their sudden and permanent disappearance. The ominous message in the village square then suggests they fully understood that there would be no return. Maybe their departure wasn't an act of escape, but a deliberate choice, a transition into a world we can't even begin to imagine. A thought that absolutely gives you chills. So is it possible to create portals through ancient rituals and secret knowledge? Portals that lead us into unknown worlds? Did the residents of Hoer Verde truly possess the power to manipulate space and time? A deeply imagination-sparking idea. But this is only the beginning. Things are about to get even more mysterious. Number 11. The mysterious case of Rudolph Fentz. The story of Rudolph Fentz is one of the most famous and most puzzling accounts linked to possible time travel. It's based on a case from the 20th century, brought to public attention by an article written by author Ivan T. Sanderson in 1951. Sanderson claimed he heard the story from a New York police officer who, in 1950, had discovered a body in the middle of Manhattan, and this man was said to be Rudolph Fentz. The circumstances under which he was found were anything but ordinary. It was a warm summer evening. The streets around Times Square were crowded, neon lights flickered, and yet this one man seemed completely out of place. He lay motionless on the pavement, as if he had wandered into this unfamiliar world and lost consciousness moments later. But the real shock came when investigators examined his clothing and personal items. Everything he carried appeared to belong to a completely different era. Inside his jacket pocket, they found a wallet containing an ID, several business cards, and handwritten notes. Every document dated to the late 19th century. Even the money in his pockets was long obsolete and had been out of circulation for decades. But the strangest item was his ID, birth year 1846. If that were accurate, Fentz would have been 104 years old in 1950. Yet the man lying there looked like someone in his 30s, healthy, strong, and showing no signs of aging. A fact that simply couldn't be ignored. Investigators couldn't find any logical explanation for how someone from the late 19th century, with all his belongings, could have suddenly appeared in 1950s New York. For many, the only explanation was that he had traveled through a time portal into the future, perhaps by accident, perhaps through a phenomenon we still don't understand. Others viewed it as evidence for the existence of parallel worlds. According to this idea, countless realities exist side by side, each with its own timeline and history. Sometimes these boundaries may become permeable for a brief moment, and in such a moment, Rudolph Fentz may have crossed from his reality into ours. If that's true, his sudden death at Times Square might have been nothing more than a tragic coincidence, the moment a traveler between worlds found himself in a place he couldn't survive. So is the mysterious case of Rudolph Fentz real proof of the existence of time travel or parallel universes? A thought that continues to captivate researchers, historians, and mystery fans to this day. What comes next is so unbelievable that you'll probably want to listen to it at least twice. Number 10. The Dodleston Messages. It is one of the most mysterious stories of modern times, and it begins in a quiet holiday cottage in the English county of Cheshire. Imagine sitting at a computer that isn't connected to the internet, when suddenly messages appear from someone who claims to have lived more than 400 years ago. That is exactly what happened in 1984 to teacher Ken Webster, and it was the beginning of an eerie communication that challenged everything. We believe we know about time and reality. Ken, his girlfriend Deb, and their friend Nick were using the cottage in Dodleston when they suddenly found strange text files on Ken's BBC Micro. A home computer that wasn't even technically capable of receiving messages like that. The words came from a man named Lucas, who claimed to be living in the year 1546, in the same house, but in a completely different time. Lucas wrote in an Old English dialect that the three could barely understand at first. He described his world in the 16th century with detailed observations, the market where he shopped, the fields he tended, and the strange, magical signs that had started appearing inside his home. These signs were, in reality, the texts Ken and his friends were typing into the computer. The communication went both ways. Everything Ken wrote on the computer appeared as if by magic on Lucas's slate, a simple board used for writing with chalk at the time. In return, Lucas's messages from the year 1546 appeared mysteriously as text files on Ken's screen. Two people, separated by 4 centuries, carrying on a conversation as if they were only a few steps apart. An absolutely incomprehensible idea. Over time, a kind of friendship developed. Lucas wrote about his fears, the village rumors of witchcraft, and his astonishment that he was apparently speaking with the future. Ken and Deb tried to explain their world to him. Electricity, cars, airplanes. But much of it sounded like a fantasy story to Lucas. In return, he painted a vivid picture of his everyday life in a time without modern technology, but full of superstition and strict laws. But then things became even more mysterious. Lucas claimed that he too had received messages from a third person, someone belonging neither to his time nor to Ken's. This unknown person spoke of places and events that existed in neither the 16th century nor the 1980s. Was this proof of a connection stretching far beyond 2 eras? Researchers and skeptics later examined the case, but found no clear explanation. There were no technical means by which a computer without internet access could receive such texts, much less from someone who had lived centuries earlier. Some suspected a prank, others believed in a disturbance in the space-time structure. Still others thought it might be a form of interdimensional communication, moments where different timelines briefly intersect. One interesting theory compares time to a giant book, each page representing a single moment. We move forward page by page, but the pages we've already passed don't vanish. They remain, even if we can no longer see or touch them. Perhaps, in the Dodleston case, an invisible tear in the book formed, linking 2 distant pages, the year 1546 and the year 1984, directly together, a thought that is more than fascinating. In 1989, Ken Webster published a book about the events titled The Vertical Plane. To this day, researchers debate whether it was an elaborate hoax or one of the rare pieces of evidence for real communication across centuries. Did Ken and Lucas truly cross the boundaries of time? Or did a window into another reality, maybe even several, open that day in Dodleston? An incredibly imagination-stirring thought. But the next case puts everything you've heard so far completely in the shadows. Number 9, the case of Sergei Ponomarenko, Kyiv, 2006. The streets are crowded, traffic roars by, when suddenly a man appears who looks as if he's fallen out of another time. He wears old-fashioned clothing, seems disoriented, and hanging around his neck is a camera commonly used in the 1950s. Bystanders watch him curiously, some suspiciously. Eventually, someone calls the police. When 2 officers arrive, they ask the stranger for his identification. What they see makes them freeze. The document is from the Soviet Union, a state that had ceased to exist 15 years earlier. It was issued in 1956 under the name Sergei Ponomarenko. According to it, he was born in 1932, meaning he should be 74 years old. But the man standing before them doesn't look older than his late 20s. And the photo in the passport? It shows the exact same young man now standing right in front of them. Confused, Ponomarenko asks what year it is. When the officers reply, 2006, his eyes widen. He claims to be from the year 1958. Back then, he said, he had been out taking photos near Kyiv. Suddenly, he saw a shiny silver object in the sky, round, metallic, like something from a science fiction movie. He quickly took a picture. Then everything was swallowed in a blinding light coming from the object. The next thing he remembers, standing in the middle of Kyiv, but it wasn't the city he knew. Streets, buildings, cars, everything was foreign, modern. The shock must have been enormous. The police developed the film from his camera. Remarkably, the photos showed historical locations in Kyiv, exactly as they looked in the 1950s, long before they were modernized. One picture even shows the mysterious silver object clearly: his clothing, his camera, even the film material. Everything matched the era he claimed to be from. And then investigators found something that made the case even more unsettling. In old police archives, they discovered a missing person report from 1958. A young woman had reported her fiancé, Sergei Ponomarenko, missing, vanished without a trace during a photo walk. The description, the photo, even the age matched perfectly with the man sitting in front of them. For the officers, this was the point where doubt seemed almost impossible. Had Ponomarenko truly traveled from 1958 to 2006, nearly 50 years into the future? Had the silver object abducted him, perhaps transported him through some kind of time corridor, and dropped him off here? Or was this an encounter with something we don't even begin to understand? Some people believe that UFO sightings aren't just encounters with unknown beings, but also with unknown times. Maybe Ponomarenko's experience wasn't just a journey through space, but through time itself. Imagine walking through your city on a sunny day, and the next moment finding yourself decades or even centuries in the future. No warning, no transition, just one blinding flash, and everything is different. The thought is fascinating, yet also deeply unsettling. Because what if you ended up in a completely different era? How would you ever return to your own time, to your life, to your family? The bitter truth might be, perhaps never, or maybe. We simply don't know. The next case pushes us to the very edge of what we consider possible. Number 8. The Mysterious Man from a Parallel World. Frankfurt an der Oder, 1851. The German city is going about its usual business, until one day a stranger appears who doesn't fit in at all. He says his name is Jophar Vorin and claims to come from a land called Laxaria, a place no one has ever heard of, a place that appears on no map. This incident, later known as the Laxaria encounter, still sparks heated debates. The man speaks a strange mix of broken German and an entirely unknown language. His clothing looks odd and noticeably different from the fashion of the time. Authorities are baffled. No one can determine where he comes from. During questioning, officers gradually manage to understand parts of his statements, and what he describes sounds like something straight out of a science fiction novel. Vorin describes Laxaria as a wealthy, peaceful land on a continent called Sakria, ruled by a king. He speaks in detail of its cities, landscapes, trade routes. Everything sounds real, yet no one knows the place. When asked how he could speak German, he claims it is an old language that hasn't been used in his world for a long time, and that he had only learned fragments of it, a claim that left the officers puzzled. Then they show him a map of Europe. Vorin studies it for a long time, confused, and finally points to the location of Frankfurt an der Oder that, he claims, is where Laxaria should be. To him, the map is outdated or simply wrong. But in our world, Frankfurt was part of the Kingdom of Prussia at the time. A place like Laxaria simply didn't exist. Vorin continues, saying that while walking in the forest, he was suddenly surrounded by a strange light. He felt as if he had traveled through space and time, and when he regained consciousness, he was standing in a foreign land that he later identified as Germany. For him, there was no doubt. He had crossed through a portal or some kind of time tunnel. His extensive knowledge astonished scholars. Vorin knew things about geography and technology that seemed unusually advanced for someone living in the 19th century. Some of his writings were in an unknown script that no one could decipher. Because of this, some researchers believed he was a visitor from another reality, perhaps even from a distant future. And indeed, Vorin is said to have claimed he was originally from the year 2083. So was he not only from a parallel world, but also a time traveler? A future existing in an alternative version of our world. The theories multiplied rapidly. Then something happened that pushed the case into the realm of the truly mysterious. After several days under strict supervision, Vorin suddenly vanished. Just like that, no trace, no explanation. Even the guards couldn't say how he disappeared. For some, this was proof that he had found a way back to his own world. Others believed he had been taken by the same force that had brought him here in the first place. So, did Jophar Vorin truly come from another reality? A world where Germany never existed, and in its place stood a kingdom called Laxaria? Or was he a traveler from the future who fell into our past through a tear in space and time? Who knows? The next case sounds like something out of a science fiction movie, except that it's real and documented. Number 7. The mysterious case of Ettore Majorana. Born in 1906, Ettore Majorana was an extraordinarily brilliant Italian physicist, best known for his work in quantum mechanics and nuclear physics. It was especially his groundbreaking theories on neutrinos that turned him into a legend in the scientific world. Colleagues described him as a genius who could solve the most complex equations in his head, which makes his sudden and still unexplained disappearance from public life all the more baffling. On March 27, 1938, Majorana boarded a ship from Palermo to Naples and never arrived. Despite large-scale search operations, with the coastline scoured and even the sea searched, there was absolutely no trace of him. No body, no personal belongings, not even a clue as to where he could have gone. This complete disappearance fueled rumors even back then, from theories of voluntary disappearance to spy stories unfolding on the eve of World War II. But the story took a dramatic turn. 17 years later, in 1955, a photo surfaced in Argentina. It showed a man who resembled Ettore Majorana down to the smallest detail. A forensic analysis of his facial features revealed 10 clear matches, more than enough to practically confirm his identity. But the most astonishing part, the man in the photo hadn't aged at all, as if the years had passed him by without leaving a single trace. For some of his former colleagues, this discovery wasn't shocking, it was a confirmation. They later reported that shortly before he vanished, Majorana had hinted he had invented something that would change the world. Some speculate he had developed a functioning time machine, one that allowed him to travel to other eras. If that's true, it would not only explain the mystery of his disappearance, but also the photo from Argentina that shows him nearly 2 decades later, as if time had completely stopped for him. Maybe Majorana really was in Argentina in 1955, not because he fled there, but because an experiment had thrown him forward in time to that point. That would explain why he didn't appear to have aged a single day, and why his sudden disappearance still feels like an unsolvable riddle. To this day, his fate remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in the history of science. Was he a brilliant researcher testing his own invention? A man far ahead of the world he lived in? Or someone who deliberately stepped through the door into another era and never returned? Maybe this man knew something humanity still hasn't grasped. And now we come to a case that surpasses everything you've heard so far. Number 6. Peter Bergmann, the man without a past. The next case we're about to show you isn't some mysterious legend. It really happened. It is one of the strangest and most puzzling stories in modern criminal history, a story raising so many questions that some see it as proof of time travel, or even of a visitor from a parallel world. It revolves around the mysterious case of Peter Bergmann, a man who appeared in June 2009 in the small harbor town of Sligo in northwest Ireland, and who, as it seems, simply didn't exist anywhere before he showed up there. The man checked into the Sligo City Hotel right in the heart of the town. He gave the name Peter Bergmann, but it soon became clear the name was fake, a carefully chosen pseudonym that cut every link to his true identity from the very beginning. During his entire stay, he behaved quietly, politely, almost unremarkably. But surveillance cameras captured him leaving the hotel every day, always carrying a distinctive purple plastic bag and returning without it. He repeated this ritual multiple times, each time walking in different directions. It appears he systematically disposed of personal items, piece by piece, at various carefully selected places across the city. On June 16, 2009, just a few days after his arrival, his lifeless body washed ashore at Ross's Point, a stretch of coast where the northwestern sea crashes relentlessly against the land. The scene looked like something out of a crime thriller. No signs of a struggle, no blood, no visible injuries. Next to the body, nothing. No ID, no wallet, no phone. Even the labels inside his clothes had been carefully removed, as if he had erased every trace of where he came from. The autopsy provided almost no answers. Investigators found no clear cause of death. There were no signs of violence, no poison, no medical explanation that made sense of it all. He was simply dead, without a clear reason. An international investigation began. Fingerprints were taken, DNA tested, databases across several countries searched. But everywhere, nothing. No match, no medical records, no driver's license data, no passport photo. It was as if this man had never lived an official life anywhere, and that fueled a wave of speculation. Some still believe that Peter Bergmann was a time traveler, stranded in an era he didn't belong to. Others think he came from a parallel world, a reality where we may exist too, but where history unfolded very differently. One detail stood out in particular: the removal of every brand and label from his clothing. Some suspect that the clothing came from manufacturers that don't exist in our world, or perhaps from a time far in the future. If that's true, then each tiny label might have revealed the real secret of where he came from. To this day, the case of Peter Bergmann remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in modern criminal history. Nothing about his behavior seemed random. Every action appeared deliberate, precise, and tied to a purpose we still don't understand. Who was this man, really? Did he come from another time? Another world? And if so, was he perhaps not the only one? Could it be that people like him have appeared here before, walking among us, and we never noticed? A fascinating, yet deeply unsettling thought. If you already have chills now, hold on, because the next case is even more terrifying. Number 5. The Count of Saint Germain. The Count of Saint Germain is considered one of the most fascinating and enigmatic figures in European history. Known for his alleged immortality and his astonishing range of talents, he is still surrounded by an aura of mystery today. He first appeared in European high society in the 1740s and quickly became famous for his remarkable musical, artistic, and alchemical abilities. His origins and true age were always shrouded in secrecy, and he claimed to have discovered the elixir of eternal youth, a bold boast that many dismissed, yet one he seemed to prove through his unchanged appearance. Contemporaries called him the Wonder Man, as he not only spoke numerous languages fluently, but also possessed an astonishingly deep knowledge of science, philosophy, and history, knowledge far beyond what was expected in his era. Some even reported that he could describe historical events with such precision that it was as if he had witnessed them himself. Others said he predicted events of the future with unsettling accuracy. All of this contributed to his reputation as a man who wasn't just extraordinarily educated, but perhaps timeless. Things became even stranger when reports of his death began to circulate, only for him to be seen again years later, completely unchanged. The last officially recorded date of his death is 1784. Yet credible eyewitness accounts kept appearing, claiming to have seen him even after 1784, sometimes in Germany, sometimes in France, sometimes even in India. Who was this mysterious man who seemed unable to age? Some historians and modern researchers believe that Saint Germain had access to knowledge or technology that not only allowed him to extend his lifespan, but perhaps even to travel through time. His seemingly first-hand descriptions of eras long gone and his prophetic glimpses into the future could have been the result of numerous time journeys. Maybe he traveled intentionally to key moments in history to observe events, or even influence them. And what if he truly found a way to break through the flow of time? What if he could jump forward or backward whenever he wished? It would certainly explain why he appeared across centuries in such different contexts, without ever seeming to grow older. Perhaps he was a wanderer between eras, someone who stayed deliberately in the background, yet kept showing up at the turning points of history. To this day, no one knows where he truly came from, who his parents were, or what his life looked like before his sudden appearance at the court of Louis XV. Some claim he was born long ago, perhaps centuries earlier, while others believe he never fully belonged to this world at all. Could he still be among us today, unnoticed, quietly watching history unfold? Who was the Count of Saint Germain really? A brilliant fraud, an alchemist, an immortal, or a time traveler who understood the secrets of the universe better than anyone else? Extremely interesting. And that was still harmless. The next case goes far beyond anything you can imagine. Number 4. The photograph from the year 5000. In 2018, a mysterious man caused a stir on the internet. He called himself Edward and appeared in several YouTube videos claiming to be a real time traveler. But it wasn't just his story that caused excitement. It was the piece of evidence he brought with him, a photograph allegedly taken in the year 5000. It showed the city of Los Angeles, completely submerged underwater. No ruins, no collapsing buildings, just an ocean with strange stilt structures rising here and there above the surface. Edward explained that he had been working for a secret organization that possessed a time machine. This machine, he said, allowed physical travel through time, but only into the future and back to the starting point. Traveling into the past before the machine's invention was impossible. A built-in safety mechanism prevented anyone from becoming stranded in a time where no return would be possible. It was a technical precaution. His glimpse into the year 5000 revealed a world that sounds like science fiction to us today, but was reality to him. Los Angeles still existed, but no longer as a city on solid land. Sea levels had risen so drastically that the original city lay entirely beneath the water. The people of that future had learned to adapt. Their homes stood on enormous platforms, towering high above the waves, supported by massive pillar structures. Between these platforms moved boats, drones, and floating transport vehicles. An extremely unusual sight. Edward compared the scene to the post-apocalyptic vision from the movie Waterworld with Kevin Costner, except that this wasn't a movie set, but a real future world. A world in which dry land had become a rare resource and life had adapted to an endless ocean. He spoke of a society that was technologically advanced, yet permanently dependent on the whims of nature. One detail was particularly interesting. He claimed the number of time travels each person could perform was limited. The reason, he said, was the enormous radiation exposure during the journeys, which permanently damaged the body. After too many trips, a traveler would inevitably become seriously ill. Edward himself had already completed multiple journeys to different futures and had seen things that, in his words, would blow anyone's mind. He also warned that in the coming decades, massive changes would hit humanity. Political upheavals, climate catastrophes, and technological developments that would completely overturn our understanding of the world. The photograph from the year 5000, he said, was just a small preview of what awaits us. So was Edward really part of a secret organization guarding the greatest secret of all? The possibility of traveling through time? Does this strange photograph truly come from a future we can barely imagine? And if so, what if he wasn't the only one who has already been there? Could there be more images somewhere showing glimpses of our distant future? Who knows? Maybe time travel already exists. Believe me, the next case is one of the strangest you'll ever hear. Number 3. The mysterious disappearance of the village at Angikuni Lake. Imagine wandering through the endless snowy plains of northern Canada. The wind whistles through the trees, frozen snow crunches beneath your boots, and suddenly, between the pines, a small Inuit village appears. Everything looks peaceful. The huts stand upright, no signs of storms or destruction. Meals still steam on tables, wood embers glow in the fire pits. And yet something is wrong. Not a single person is in sight. This was the scene described in 1930 by fur trapper Joe LaBelle, an experienced woodsman who already knew the village. That day, he simply wanted to stop by and greet his acquaintances, and instead found himself standing in an eerie silence. No laughter, no voices, no barking sled dogs, only the cracking of ice beneath his feet. The deeper he walked into the village, the stranger it became. The huts were tidy, the food fresh, the tools neatly in place, as if the residents had dropped everything in the middle of daily life. But there was no trace of them. Even the sled dogs were gone, or rather, dead, frozen in the snow, still tied up, as if no one had time left to free them. And then came perhaps the creepiest detail. Several graves on the edge of the village had been opened and left empty, as if someone, or something, had taken the dead. LaBelle ran back to the nearest settlement and alerted the authorities. The Canadian police searched the area, questioned neighboring communities, and looked for clues. But found nothing. No footprints, no sled tracks, no signs of struggle. It was as if the entire village had vanished into thin air. Soon theories began to emerge, and they grew increasingly strange. Some believed that the villagers had been pulled into another dimension, through an invisible portal that swallowed them in the middle of daily life. Others told of strange lights in the sky and believed that UFOs had taken the villagers. In the legends of Canada's far north, there are stories of spirits and powerful beings that carry people into the afterlife or other realms. Maybe this was such an encounter. Of course, there were skeptics. Some argued that the story was a horror tale LaBelle invented to gain fame. Others suggested the villagers fled due to hunger or a natural disaster, and died somewhere in the wilderness. But these explanations leave many questions unanswered. Why were the meals untouched? Why were the graves opened? And why were there no tracks in the snow? To this day, the disappearance of the village at Angikuni Lake remains one of Canada's most puzzling mysteries. Historians may dismiss it as legend, but to many, it sounds like a real event pointing to something far beyond our understanding. Was it a dimensional rift, a shift in time, or something that doesn't even have a name? A disturbing thought that an entire place, its people, its animals, its history, can simply vanish from our reality. That was already insane. But the next case truly shakes everything. Number 2. The photographs from the year 3311, March 2019. On the YouTube channel Apex TV, known for its reports on paranormal events and mysterious stories, a video appears that immediately grabs attention. In it, a man sits in front of the camera, his face blurred, his voice distorted. He gives no name, only one claim. He is a time traveler from the year 3311, and he has proof. Slowly, almost ceremonially, he reveals 3 photographs. The first shows something that looks like a floating city, a massive island drifting high above the clouds, filled with glowing buildings. The time traveler says he took the image during a mission in the future. Then he holds up the next photo, a strangely shaped structure, supposedly a typical residential building of that distant time. Finally, the third picture, an aircraft gliding over houses and trees, futuristic yet strangely familiar. His story sounds like something straight out of a science fiction novel. He claims he took part in a secret operation in the 1990s after being selected for his skills in computer engineering. During this mission, he learned that time travel had become possible through the use of quantum computing, a technology. Based on the bizarre laws of quantum mechanics, capable of calculations no classical computer could ever perform. The man describes how this time machine first brought him to a highly advanced future city, and then, with another jump, to a completely different place in the year 3311. His mission? Bring back evidence. Exactly these photos he now holds in his hands. Reactions to the video were divided. Some viewers were fascinated, convinced that this man had truly seen the future. Others dismissed the images as crude forgeries. Experts pointed to potential manipulation, yet the time traveler insisted on his version. And this is where the real mystery begins. If the photos are genuine, what does that mean for our understanding of space and time? Has humanity in the year 3311 truly created an entirely new way of living, high above the earth? And if someone has already been there, how many other visitors from the future might be walking among us right now, unnoticed? Ready for the finale? Then pay close attention. Number 1. Mel's Hole. In the late 1990s, a story spread across the United States, a story so bizarre and fascinating that it quickly grew into a modern legend. It all began with a call to the popular nighttime radio show Coast to Coast AM, a program known for discussing paranormal events, unexplained phenomena, and conspiracy theories. On the other end of the line was a man calling himself Mel Waters. He claimed to have discovered a hole on his rural property in Ellensburg, Washington. A hole so deep, it seemed to have no bottom. Mel reported in a calm but intense voice that he had tried to measure its depth. He attached a heavy fishing line to a reel, tied markers at regular intervals, and slowly lowered it down. But even after hundreds of meters, there was no end, no resistance, no impact sound, just a bottomless, devouring void. Everything thrown into it disappeared without any echo or sign of ever hitting a surface. To Mel, it felt like the hole swallowed objects out of our reality. But that was only the beginning. According to him, some objects thrown into the hole later showed mysterious changes. In one of his most disturbing stories, Mel said that a dog that had died and been thrown into the hole was later seen alive and healthy near his property, without injuries, as if it had never died. These and similar accounts led to wild speculation. Was the hole a passage into another dimension, a tear in space-time, or even a gateway to a place where the laws of life and death no longer applied? The more Mel told, the greater the public interest grew, and the stranger the situation became. Soon he claimed that government agents had approached him. According to him, they confiscated his land, paid him a large sum of money, and forced him to remain silent. He even said he was taken out of the country for a time to keep him away from the site. Official agencies never commented on these accusations, which only fueled the legend. Skeptics are convinced that Mel Waters invented or embellished the story, perhaps to gain attention or stir excitement on the radio show. But even critics admit the tale was delivered with such detail and conviction that it still sparks discussion decades later. In the years that followed, more and more theories emerged. Some believed the hole was part of a military experiment testing new technologies for matter transformation. Others saw it as a relic from prehistoric times, created by an unknown civilization, perhaps even extraterrestrial visitors. Still others believed it was a natural geological phenomenon that we simply do not yet understand due to its extreme depth and structure. But the idea that somewhere on Earth there might be a place defying the laws of our world is deeply compelling. What if Mel's Hole truly is a portal, not just to another location, but to an entirely different reality? Could there be a parallel world waiting on the other side, where time and space have no limits? Whether real or simply a masterpiece of modern myth-making, the story of Mel's Hole lives on. It has become a symbol of our fascination with the unknown and a reflection of our deepest desire to break through the boundaries of our reality. So, is Mel's Hole truly a gateway into another dimension? What an intriguing thought. What do you think? Is there truly more behind these cases than we can possibly imagine? Which case fascinated you the most? Write it in the comments below. We're really curious to hear what you think. If you enjoyed the video, we'd really appreciate a like and a subscription. Thank you so much.